Hello everybody, my name is Tommy Palm, and the title of my talk is Game Accelerators for the Arts, not for Monetization. I had a person I didn't know come up to me yesterday and ask me if it was an ironic title, which I assure you it's not. He had a different picture of who I was publicly and what I would talk about. I heard you could get into this session with an expo pass, so I considered to have like a freemium model for this talk to help out the poor organizers with their cash, but I decided against it. So I'm going to read this slide as a wall of text. Between 1962 and 1984, Andy Warhol had a studio in New York called The Factory. There he invited other artists, musicians, writers, filmmakers to spend time working on their projects side by side. People like Bob Dylan, Truman Capote, Mick Jagger. This was the same idea Oscar Burman had in mind when he sat with Tommy Palm. One day in his office in Stockholm, bringing 20 game developers together to spend a summer in the cabin in the woods of Sweden. This was written by Louis Wong in an article in Kill Screen magazine. And this presentation is about a non-profit accelerator that I've been involved in my spare time. And it's been one of the most rewarding experience of my career. I've divided this up in three parts, and I'll tell you about the startup of this process first. The pictures are from the Stuganeers themselves for most parts. We have a few of them here. Happy to see there. But 2 years when this came about, I had already had quite a long career in game development, and I've been lucky enough to go to several fantastic events. This picture is from Oulu in northern Finland, where I spent 4 days workshopping with very talented game developers in a formal mental institution, and I met some of my now best friends there. And I had some thoughts that this would be something really cool to do more often with getting talented people together. And I met Oscar, and he showed me a PowerPoint on his idea of a summer camp for game developers, and I jumped on that, and I thought that's way too fun to not do. So we started working on it on weekends and evenings, and we got Jana on board, who worked full-time on the project as well. We commissioned a graphic designer to make this picture very early on. This was kind of the thing we had in mind, a cabin out in the Swedish nature where you would work together with your friends. And this was very helpful for us throughout the project. One of the other things that came up very early, I always felt that it's very important to have a good name for the things that you're working on, even if it's a game engine or it's a company or an idea that you're working on. And we came together and discussed, and we felt that one thing that we wanted to have is this Swedish sounding name that would sound very exotic to others and make it easier for its uniqueness. Some ice cream manufacturers have adopted the same thing without it actually being a Swedish word. And I thought about that. I was studying at the Royal Institute of Technology once upon a time, and my teacher there made the first commercial video game in Sweden in 1978. And I went there back to him, and I explained about the project and asked if we could borrow that name. And he asked his friends that was also helping him out doing this fantastic text-based adventure game. And they loved the idea, and we could use that name Stugan as a throwback to that old game. So the financial aspects of this is a core part of the presentation. And we felt that traditional accelerators normally work a little bit like investors, that they take a part of the company that people apply and come together as a team. But there were several different problems with that. One of the things was that most of the game developers that we knew that was really talented indies didn't have a company. And we wanted them to be able to come from the whole world, not only Sweden, obviously. And we know nothing about corporate laws outside Sweden, and not very much about Swedish corporate laws either, to be honest. But so we wanted to get rid of that shackle. Another thing was the commitment. This was a new project, and we knew that the indie game developers didn't necessarily know very much about us and would be hesitant to give away something they might have been working on for a really long time. So it would be much easier if we didn't have that thing where we needed to have this long-term commitment. Also, if you're an incubator or an accelerator, you need to focus a lot on the economy. And even though we believe that that's an important part of making games, it's not that much fun. I rather not focus on that part. With a lot of other interesting talks about monetization and stuff. But we didn't, it's not what we wanted. We felt that it would be really fantastic to really focus on the things that we truly enjoy, the joy of game development and inspiration of creating great ideas. We also felt that it's very hard to predict what is a hit and what is not a hit. And to have this much looser form where we would just select some really cool people and projects would make it easier for us not to be reliant on that financial aspect. So we had to come up with another way of financing this, and Sweden has been fortunate of having some successes, and some people made money out of that. So we gathered some of our successful friends in a fundraiser in Stockholm in November 2014. And fundraiser is something that is unheard of in Sweden. We only seen it in American movies. So we kind of did our best version of it. And we told them about this project that was still very loose. And people were really psyched about it and just helping out. So we got a majority of the money from just private sponsors from very successful games companies. Another part of it is that we didn't have really a budget for any marketing. So instead we tried to utilize our personal brand and the company brands and the game brands to create buzz about this project. So we would reach out and developers would hear so they could apply. And we spent a little bit of money on PR efforts. And we have a very talented PR guru that I've been working with. Paul, and he helped us to create a fantastic amount of interest for the project, which was vital for people finding out and being able to apply in time. One of the bigger challenges that we didn't really realize, we felt that it would be great if people could follow the concept from all around the world. And in our naive thoughts, we thought, let's get the YouTuber and be embedded there, and they would love that, and they get a lot of attention and have materials to write about. But it turned out that wasn't at all that easy. Our networks is very strong in the game development community, and we asked the YouTubers that we knew about, the ones that were already successful, felt that they didn't want to live in a forest and that would be hampering their work. And we didn't get a lot of interest for this. So this started to become a problem. And 1 month before, we still hadn't a solution, really. Until, fortunately, I was interviewed by this British video game reporter named Alicia Judge. And she had read about Stugan, and she asked a lot about really interesting questions, and she seemed genuinely psyched about the project. So we asked her if she wanted to join Stugan and be an embedded reporter there for the entire stay, and she said yes. So that was fantastic, and she helped out with filming and doing the scripts and even some of the editing. So it was possible to follow Stugan from the sidelines. We had tried to have a rather simple application process where people would just record a 90-second video of themselves and their game concept and send it to us. This is me, Oscar and Jana, working through those videos and a short description of their game and trying to select which team we wanted. We wanted a very diverse group of people from different backgrounds and different parts of the world. We felt that would be a very good source of inspiration and interest from media and stuff. this brings me to the second part, which is year one. The night before it started, I think nobody could really sleep. Bringing 23 strangers into a cabin, isolated cabin in the woods, is, you can imagine anything could happen. But it turned out to be absolutely fine, of course. The 21st of July, all the people met there from different parts of the world, and they stayed for 8 weeks, living together and eating their food there, working. So here is an overview video of the location that we got in the end. It's way much bigger than we had originally imagined that we would need, but it turned out that this was perfect size for the 23 people. So they had a separate room to sleep in, and a separate house to work in, and another place to eat. So that was really great. And it was by a lake and rather isolated 3 hours outside Stockholm. When it comes to the actual budget, we spent about $150K on the project. We got a majority of the money from individual sponsors. We got some money from the region itself that wanted to have this project there, and some money from the Swedish Innovation Fund, sponsored by the government. That's Vinnova, with a third of the cash. We also, very importantly, got to borrow that entire location from the Swedish traffic organization, which was a huge help for the budget. That's not actually in the budget. So we spent more money on food instead than we would normally, because they had just one caterer that we could use for food. We discussed a lot on how the teams would keep their motivation going out into a sunny place for the entire summer. But it turned out that the team were able to themselves get very inspired by the pure chance of getting to work on their project undisturbed. There was no regular office hours, but every time I was there, the people were working late into the nights and were very focused on their task. Mentors came up 3 times a week to meet with the teams one-on-one. And there was a great interest for, we had more mentors actually wanting to come up than we could accommodate. And in the end, we had a presentation of all the concepts and games at the Technical Museum in Stockholm, where there was a lot of interest from the press. We had articles from Wall Street Journal and a lot of big publications. Even Playboy wrote a piece on this. We had participants at different levels, which was a great thing. So some of the teams were really experienced and had done it many times before. Other teams, this was their first game that they worked on. Here's some of the mentors that came up. We had Jens Bergensten from Mojang, is one of the lead developers and designers on Minecraft. We have people from international that flew over. Paul Bragiel is a angel investor. Paul Brady, our PR guru, helped the team with strategies on getting press and getting their stories about the game out there. Something that we felt is a core part of discovery for your indie games, to work professionally with that. Stephen Jared from King was one of the more popular mentors who spoke to the teams about their creative process. We also got Viggo, the professor who made the original Stugan game when he was 12. He came up and talked about math and all algorithms and stuff. That was great. So the third part of this is the second part of Stugan that we are doing this year. So we've raised another round of financing to clear the second year, and we have opened the application process. And the first game that came out of Stugan released earlier, and I wanted to show you the application that Clint sent into us when he applied. And this is Clint's first game. He made a few tutorial games in Unity before this. He used to work as a visual artist in Hollywood before. Oh, sorry.
Hi Stugan, my name is Clint Sue, and this is Prism. Prism is a puzzle game for iPad about atomic matter. By solving patterns and symbols on each prism, the structure starts to unfold, and you begin to discover the secrets that connect the entire universe.
Short and sweet. This is one of a typical project that I find extremely inspiring. When you have a single individual doing all the programming, game design, just scoping the project, and he's also done the sound effects and music behind it. So it's really like a one-man game factory. He released it for iOS, and it became one of the top 20 most downloaded paid apps pretty quickly. You can see it in the expo floor. It's a huge made by Unity promotion for the game as well. And Clint is working on taking it to other platforms as well. As I said, we opened a new application process. It goes throughout the end of this month. Just to summarize, some of the big challenges that we faced was finding the location. We thought that it would be very easy. Like Sweden is a sparsely populated country, and it has a lot of great old houses in the middle of nowhere. And a lot of these are connected with really strong fiber internet. But we were spending a lot of time searching for something that would fit us. There was always something that didn't really fit the puzzle. So we were very happy we found it eventually. The YouTuber that I mentioned turned out to be much more difficult than we could possibly imagine. And getting people to apply was something that was sincerely nerve-wracking. We had an application process last year, and when there were still 2 weeks left, there was very, very few applicants. And we had already made a big buzz about this in press, and we were getting very nervous that we wouldn't be able to fill the 20 spaces. As we thought, a lot of them came in the very end of the application process, but we actually we got an advice to prolong it a little bit and say that we would help with feedback if people applied early. So made our self-confidence a little better. It turned out to be a little bit tricky to get the mentors and journalists out there in the middle of nowhere. The Swedish people who lived nearby, that was easier, but flying people into Stockholm, which is rather far in itself, and then taking a train out 3 hours is challenging, but can be done. And for the mentors that came there, they were extremely inspired by the teams and super excited about coming out again next year. So in my final notes here, I just wanted to say something. I saw this great article in VentureBeat about the hottest startup ecosystem. Silicon Valley was listed as the #1, and Stockholm was listed as #2, actually. And they explained how they put this together and said that the biggest contributing thing was a pay-it-forward culture, mentality. And they used a young Steve Jobs that was mentored by Intel's CEO as a great example. And I really like this with game development in general. There's a big community of helping each other out and not seeing each other as competitors very much. And I definitely think that it's good for both consumers and developers in the end that we get better games. So that's all for this presentation. If you're interested in the project, you can see links here. There was also Jana, who's the project manager for Forstugan is here today as well, so you can talk to her if you want. I'll happily answer questions. Thank you very much.
Hi.
Hi.
My main question is, how do you evaluate artistic success if it's an incubator for artistic creation?
That's a good question. We do not really evaluate it, I would say. We are very much focused on those 8 weeks. We're super happy to see if the game comes out, and then that's definitely an aspiration that we have, that we want to select projects that we think are scoped so they can come out. But other than that, this differs very much from other incubators in that way that we don't necessarily need to see a commercial success in order to be happy. We have been, when we have selected project, we've been trying to be a little bit edgy and looked at taking things that feels very innovative and different from maybe what traditional incubators or publishers would accept.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Am I allowed to do this? Hi.
Hi.
I have a question. I was part of a program like this, very similar, last year. And you were saying that it was what was it called, the fundraiser culture. Fundraisers don't really happen over there. And it seemed, I mean, obviously it was very successful. I'm wondering about that, like how did you get that to work? And also just kind of how does this pay it forward culture work? Like all these people are probably not known for giving tons of money away without anything coming back. Is there convincing that has to be done? I mean, I don't want to say what's in it for them, but yeah, what's in it for them? I mean, is it like press or just because they've...
Well, I think it was different from different people. I definitely think that some are motivated by the chance of getting seen as a sponsor, but many of them felt that they've been successful in games, and that has been very inspiring for them. So it's one of those things. We had a lengthy discussion on the last fundraiser, like what are the goals? Why should we do this, and why are we doing it? And I think it varies very much from person to person. From me personally, I just like the idea very much, and I think it's a lot of fun to do something that is very different and doesn't necessarily need to be focused on financing and packaging and all these other things that comes into commercial game projects. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. I'll be around if you want to ask us more. Thank you.